Hello everyone! Tonight we will delve into the cold, ancient dread wrapped within a single colossal manuscript, the Codex Gigas, often named the Devil's Bible. Dim the lights, if you haven't already. Can you hear the wind outside? It's a quiet night, perfect for unearthing something truly unsettling. Imagine a vast, silent hall deep within a historical library. The air is so thick with dust and age that it feels heavy on your skin. You feel a prickle, a faint, almost non-existent chill that settles not on your neck, but in the center of your chest. This is the atmosphere you must adopt, because the story we are about to explore is not just history. It is an inescapable dream woven into calfskin parchment. Do you have the courage to step into that place? You may not survive the first night spent alone with this book. So before we begin, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to my channel, but only if you truly enjoy the content I create. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And what is the exact local time? Let's see how far apart we all are, sharing this one chilling moment. Now, relax, create a little background noise for our story, and let's begin this journey. The initial encounter with the Codex Gigas is always about its unnatural weight. Forget what you think you know about ancient books. This is not a quaint, leather-bound volume. You are standing before a behemoth, nearly a meter tall, bound in wood and covered in pale, ghostly leather. It is said to weigh over 165 pounds. Think about that for a second. An ancient text, designed not for casual reading, but seemingly designed to be a permanent, immovable fixture, chained to a desk, or perhaps chained to keep something inside. It sits before you, an edifice of dread, and you feel the immense pressure it exerts on the very space around it. Imagine your hand hovering over that cover. The wood beneath the leather is thick, almost like a coffin lid. The metal fittings are heavy, scarred by centuries of movement and neglect. The physical presence of the Codex is the first clue that this is not a book compiled by ordinary means. No one knows why one man, a single scribe in a single place, would undertake a project this immense, requiring the skins of over 160 donkeys, a lifetime of work in an era defined by manual labor. This leads us to a fascinating, confusing academic debate. Scholars estimate that to copy the sheer volume of text, everything from the complete Latin Vulgate Bible to medical treatises and historical chronicles, it would take one dedicated scribe over 20 years of continuous, non-stop writing, without breaks for illness, sleep, or prayer. Yet, the entire manuscript, all 620 pages of it, shows an incredible uniformity of handwriting, an almost unnatural consistency that suggests it was completed in a fraction of that time. No one knows why the handwriting never wavers, why the complex illuminations never become simpler, or why the work shows no sign of aging hands or fading morale. It is as if the effort was supernatural, bypassing the limits of human endurance. The legend, which whispers through the damp corridors of libraries in Prague and Stockholm, speaks of a man named Herman the Recluse, a Benedictine monk in the Podlajice monastery in Bohemia, early in the 13th century. He was a man facing the most real historical horror event of his life execution, having broken his monastic vows. The punishment was to be walled up alive, a slow, terrifying end designed to show the severity of their rules. Facing this grim fate, Herman made an impulsive, desperate proposal. He promised the abbot he would create a single book overnight that would contain all human knowledge and forever glorify the monastery. A foolish, impossible boast, a dark joke against death itself. But the abbot, perhaps amused or perhaps simply cruel, agreed. You can almost smell the fear radiating from Herman. Picture him in that cold scriptorium, the candlelight flickering, the heavy parchment rolls stacked around him. The darkness outside the window presses in. It is midnight. He realizes the horrifying scope of his promise. He cannot do it. He cannot possibly complete a book of this magnitude before the sun rises. The chilling reality sinks in, an existential dread heavier than the codex itself. And this is where we arrive at a strange, mysterious detail, the source of the book's notoriety. In that moment of absolute despair, Herman turned to a power far older and far darker than his abbot. He didn't pray to God for speed. Instead, he invoked the fallen angel, the ultimate patron of impossible deals. He summoned the devil himself. The bargain was simple, yet terrifying. The monk would provide his soul, and the devil would complete the entire manuscript before the morning chime. When the clock struck 3, the book was finished. But the devil, being the master of vanity, demanded one final addition, his own portrait, a testament to the pact, drawn in the book by Herman, who was now his unwilling servant. You hear a sharp tap, tap, tap. Don't look behind you. It's just the sound of a fingernail on a parchment roll somewhere far away. Or is it? We are just opening the cover. The weight of this history, the weight of that unholy bargain, is now resting on your mind. Remember the weight, the chilling silence, and the unnatural speed of its creation. You have taken the first step toward the forbidden text. You cannot turn back now. You slide the vast manuscript onto the specialized, reinforced table. The effort required is absurd. It creaks and groans, resisting the move. As you settle it, a faint, metallic scent rises from the aged leather. Something sharp, like old blood mixed with iron dust. We're moving now past the legend of Herman the Recluse and into the monastic bargain itself. What exactly did the monk promise? And what did he get in return? The initial promise was the book. The return was life, and the ability to continue his work, though now under a darker master. But the devil's work is never clean. The chilling bargain wasn't just a transaction of souls, it was an act of insidious transformation. The script, so perfect and uniform, wasn't written by Herman's hand. It was written through him. Imagine sitting there, the quill moving with a terrifying, autonomous speed. Your fingers merely anchors, your mind a terrified passenger. This terrifying thought leads us to a confusing academic debate regarding the script itself. Look closely at the lettering. It is known as textura, a Gothic script of the highest medieval quality. But when you compare the script of the Codex Gigas to other texts of the time, something is fundamentally wrong. The letters are too perfect, too machine-like, almost printed. They lack the subtle human imperfections, the tiny variations in pressure and angle that define handwritten work. No one knows why the Latin script possesses this eerie, flawless consistency, almost like a font rendered before fonts were invented. It fuels the theory that no human hand could maintain such robotic precision for 165 pounds of text. It's a signature of something else. We move from the script to the setting of this terrible night, a real historical horror event. Herman was locked in the scriptorium, but the entire monastery around him, Podlajete, was facing its own creeping doom, a series of unexplained, brutal monastic purges that often involved accusations of heresy, black magic, or sodomy. Monks often disappeared, found walled up, or simply vanished into the forests, often after strange confessions. Herman's execution wasn't just a punishment, it was a desperate attempt by the abbot to project control in an atmosphere thick with fear and suspicion. Think of the psychological terror, the fear of death, the fear of eternal damnation, all while the devil sits across the table, offering a way out, but only into a different, colder kind of hell. You shiver, don't you? I can almost hear your breath hitching. Herman's fear and the resulting bargain are immortalized in a strange, mysterious detail found in the book's composition, mixed in with the holy texts and the history. There are several chilling, entirely secular sections, a precise step-by-step guide on exorcism, a strange tract on magic spells, and a complete calendar that omits any mention of certain major saints' days. Why would a book intended to glorify the monastery dedicate so much space to the very practices that could have led to Herman's own imprisonment and death? It's as if the devil, in completing the text, included his own subtle instruction manual for his new follower, embedding forbidden knowledge right next to the Gospels. It's a very dark joke, indeed. There is a short side story here, a moment of needed relief. Have you ever tried to make a joke when you were absolutely terrified Herman, perhaps, attempted a light joke in his desperation? Some scholars believe the word Giga's giant itself was a subtle, desperate piece of humor. He told the abbot he'd write a giant book. The devil delivered a book that was literally gigantic. The sheer over-the-top size became the joke a twisted testament to the devil's literalism. If you hear a distant, dry cackle now, don't blame me. I warned you. That's just the sound of dark historical irony. Now, focus on the weight again. The 165 pounds. A slight joke, but a real chilling thought. The true, terrifying weight of the book is the cumulative spiritual dread pressed into its pages. Each page turned in that single night represents a frantic bargain, a soul being slowly eroded. You are turning those pages now, and with every heavy thud as the page settles, you feel a faint electrical pulse. It's not static, it's the trapped energy of that single, terrible night. Remember the faint metallic scent. It's getting stronger now, almost coppery. This scent is believed by some to be the trace memory of the fear and the ink, mixed together forever. You are alone in the archive, holding the result of a desperate, cursed deal, and you can almost hear the soft, frantic scraping of the devil's quill against the parchment, hours before dawn. The climax of this section is the dawn itself. Herman finished the book just as the morning bell chimed. He presented it, saved his life, but lost everything else. The abbot, upon seeing the book, was stunned into silence, immediately sensing the presence of something impure. The execution was averted, but the monk's life became a permanent penance, a slow-paced, psychological torture far worse than being walled up. Look closely at the script now. Do you dare step forward and place your finger on one of the letters? The ink seems to shimmer slightly in the low light, almost as if it's still wet, still drying from that single night almost 1,000 years ago. You are now immersed in the heart of the manuscript, having turned past the densely packed pages of Genesis and the initial Chronicles. You're approaching the central fold, the point where the book truly earns its terrifying nickname. This is the promise section, the Devil's Portrait. The moment before you see it is heavy with anticipation. The parchment leading up to this page is stained with a peculiar reddish-brown discoloration. Was it intentional? Or is this another strange, mysterious detail, the residue of the monk's terror, manifesting as a physical blight on the page before the portrait? The paper is colder here, noticeably so, as if the air itself has thinned, removing the latent warmth of the room. Then, you turn the page. The portrait is immense, filling the entire page, rendered in stark, horrifying detail. It is not a caricature, not the silly pitchfork-wielding fiend of cheap folklore. This is something far more disturbing. The devil is depicted crouching, a solitary figure against a vast, empty field of parchment. He is naked, hunched over, his vast claws spread. The head is monstrous, crowned with tiny horns, eyes that are enormous black pits, and a mouth drawn in a peculiar, unsettling grin that suggests not malice, but bottomless, cold amusement. Look at the fine details. The devil's hands and feet have only 4 fingers and toes. His body is covered in a bizarre, scale-like pattern that only hints at anatomy. But the most terrifying thing is the confusing academic debate surrounding his pose. He is not standing in triumph or rage. He is crouching, almost deferentially, one enormous hand raised, palm outward. No one knows why the figure of pure evil would be depicted in a posture of almost defensive humility. Is he protecting himself from the holy texts surrounding him? Or is this, chilling, the posture of a servant waiting patiently for his master's command? Scholars debate whether this detail was forced upon the devil by the monk, Herman, as a final desperate act of spiritual resistance, or if it was the devil's own subtle, arrogant signature, a promise of patient, eternal waiting. This chilling iconography brings to mind a real historical horror event, the widespread terror of demonic possession that gripped Europe for centuries. Monasteries, meant to be sanctuaries, were often epicenters of this fear. In the early 17th century, the Ursuline nuns of Loudun, France, claimed mass possession, leading to a horrifying series of exorcisms and, eventually, the brutal execution of the priest Urbain Grandier. The terror was rooted in the visual, the sensory, the contortions, the inhuman voices, the blasphemies. The portrait in the Codex Gigas serves as a visual anchor to that fear, reminding you that sometimes the devil doesn't just whisper in the dark. Sometimes he signs his work right in the middle of a sacred text. I can feel your eyes lingering on the illustration. Don't stare too long. The legends claim that anyone who spends too much time studying the portrait begins to hear the faintest sound of rustling scales, a sound only perceptible in absolute silence. Listen closely. Do you hear anything besides your own blood rushing in your ears? This is our silent dialogue. The book is speaking to your fear. And here is a small, necessary, creepy joke. Imagine Herman, the monk, finishing the drawing just before dawn. He stands back, wiping sweat from his brow. He looks at the devil, who then points a massive claw at the drawing and says, "Just one thing, Herman, could you make the horns a little more flattering?" It's a ridiculous thought, but sometimes a burst of absurdity is the only thing that keeps the deep dread from crushing you entirely. The climax of this section lies in the ink. The black ink used for the figure is unlike the ink used for the rest of the manuscript. It is thicker, almost tar-like, and seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. You have the sudden, overwhelming sensation that this ink is not merely a pigment, but a tangible darkness, a piece of that dreadful night physically captured and preserved on the parchment. You trace the outline of the page with your eyes. The facing page, opposite the devil, is completely blank, left empty, stark white. It's a vast expanse of nothingness, and that void feels just as terrifying as the portrait itself. The pure, untouched parchment seems to be waiting, always waiting, for the next inscription, the next soul's signature, and you are standing right here, reading their story, with the void staring back at you. You close the book quickly, the heavy thud echoing unnaturally loud in the silence of the archive. The massive cover settles, and for a moment, the tension breaks. You take a breath, but the image of the crouching devil remains burned into your internal vision. We must move on from the creation to the discovery, to where you now stand, examining the history of its physical movement. This section deals with the forgotten library, the countless temporary resting places the Codex has known. This enormous, cursed object was never meant to stay put. It was a trophy, a liability, and a terrifying possession all at once. It moved constantly through medieval Europe, carried as spoils of war, traded among rulers, or hidden in deep vaults, always leaving a faint trail of dread in its wake. Imagine yourself as a historian, tracing the path of this monstrous volume. You are not in Prague or Stockholm yet, but in a dusty, nondescript monastery library in southern Germany, circa the 17th century. This is one of the Codex's temporary homes. The library is a chamber of cold stone, lit only by a tiny, high window. The air smells of mold and decay, a smell that clings to your clothing. This is a real historical horror event, the quiet disappearance of several monks over a decade. They weren't murdered, and they didn't flee. They simply stopped appearing for morning prayers, leaving behind only their habits folded neatly on their beds. The local belief was that the library itself was hungry, consuming the lives of those who spent too long seeking forbidden knowledge. The Codex Gigas was, of course, chained to the central lectern, always open to the historical chronicles section. As you look around this imagined library, you notice a strange, mysterious detail etched into the stone floor near where the book was held, a faint, almost invisible circle, barely larger than the book itself. This wasn't a marker for placement. It was a chalked, protective barrier, a hastily drawn magic circle meant to contain the book's influence. Someone, perhaps one of the vanished monks, realized the Codex wasn't just about dark things. It was a source of darkness itself. Yet, the circle is broken. A thin line scored through the chalk where a chair leg likely scraped against it years ago. A crucial breach in the defense, and the slow, insidious consumption of the monks began. This leads us to a confusing academic debate. When the book was later moved during the 30 Years' War, records show the librarians insisted on moving it only under the light of a new moon, and only by a team of 3 unbaptized men. This sounds like strange superstition, doesn't it? But why this precise combination? No one knows why the new moon was mandatory, or why only unbaptized hands were trusted to handle the holy and unholy text. Was it a ritual to avoid tainting the book further, or a ritual to prevent the book from tainting the carriers? The logic defies both Christian doctrine and common sense, suggesting a secret, coded knowledge shared only by the book's temporary, terrified custodians. There's a short, unsettling, creepy joke that emerges from this. Imagine the team of 3 unbaptized men struggling to carry the 165-pound tome through the snow. One man trips, and the book falls into the muck. The foreman yells, "Careful. That book contains the history of the world and a portrait of the devil." The man wiping the mud off the cover whispers, "Well, at least the devil won't complain if we get a smudge on his picture." It's a gallows humor that reflects the constant, crushing burden of the book. You are now performing a silent dialogue with your inner self. You feel the dust on your fingers, the grit from the forgotten library. Are you sure you are alone? When you close the Codex, did you hear a sound after the heavy thud? Perhaps a slight sigh. You dare not open it again, but you know the sheer mass of the object holds a kind of gravitational pull, a psychological weight that insists on being felt. The climax of this section is the realization that the book always found its way out of hiding. It was never permanently lost, whether it was hidden by kings or looted by armies. The Codex Gigas possesses a malignant resilience, an uncanny ability to surface again, always dragging its history, its curse, and the silent portrait along with it. It waits patiently in the darkness, knowing that sooner or later, someone like you will come along to open it. You step back from the massive book, your hands feeling strangely cold, even closed. Its presence is a palpable weight in the room. But now, we move into the night, when the book begins its subtle, insidious work. This is the section about the whispering ink, the unsettling sensation that the Codex is somehow active, even when no human is touching it. The archives are locked. You are outside, watching through the small, high window. Or perhaps you are simply imagining the scene, letting the dread wash over you. The moon is full tonight, casting long, fractured shadows across the floor. You see the massive shape of the Codex Gigas chained to the lectern, a black monument in a silver room. And then it happens. A subtle shift. You see the slow, deliberate movement of a page. Not a large, fluttering turn, but a minute, silent slide, as if an invisible thread is gently drawing the parchment across the wooden spine. Listen closely. Do you hear the faint, dry scrap? It is the sound of ancient calfskin rubbing against itself, a sound that should not exist in an empty room. This phantom page-turning is the core of a confusing academic debate. Librarians who have spent years near the codex often report this phenomenon. Is it just air pressure changes, humidity fluctuation causing the vellum to contract, or is it something else? No one knows why the movement is never random. It always progresses the book forward, page by page, section by section, towards the portrait of the devil, and then past it, to the most terrifying parts of the text, the hidden rituals and the forbidden lore. It is a terrifying, slow-paced reveal, guided by a non-human will. This movement brings us back to a real historical horror event. During the time the codex was held in the monastery of Brumov in the 17th century, there was a series of unexplained accidents involving the library's chains and restraints. Massive iron chains, designed to hold the book firmly, were found strangely twisted, or even completely unlinked, resting neatly on the floor. At least 2 monks who were assigned to guard the library were later found dead outside their cell doors, their faces frozen in expressions of silent, utter terror, though their bodies showed no signs of struggle or violence. The local explanation was simple. The book demanded to be free, and those who tried to restrain it were quietly extinguished by an unseen force. There is a strange, mysterious detail that accompanies this phenomenon, a lingering smell. It's not the metallic scent we discussed before. This is the faint, almost sweet odor of burnt sulfur, the classic, cliched aroma of demonic presence. But this smell is subtle. It doesn't overpower. It lingers on the paper, only detectable moments after a page has turned itself. It is the signature of the unseen energy expended in the action. Here is a short, unsettling, creepy joke to lighten the thick dread. One monk, tired of the moving pages, supposedly tied a small bell to the corner of the codex. That night, the bell began to ring, slowly, one chime every hour. The monk ran to the scriptorium, expecting to find the devil or a thief. Instead, he found the book closed, the bell still. The next morning, the bell was found 3 miles away, in the middle of a field. The message was clear. Nice try, but I like my privacy. If you hear a distant bell now, don't blame me. I warned you. You are performing a silent dialogue with the text. You look at the book and imagine its contents being consumed, page by page, by an invisible, slow force. You feel a sudden, acute need to go back inside, to stop the turning, to close the book on the devil's portrait and seal the cover shut. But you know that the force turning those pages is far stronger than your mere human curiosity or your willpower. The climax of this section is the understanding that the Codex Gigas is not just a passive historical artifact. It is an agent, a thing that chooses its readers, chooses its display. Every time a page moves in the dead of night, it is an invitation, a slow, inexorable pull into the terrifying darkness of its contents. And tonight, it has chosen you. You realize the Codex is moving on its own, not randomly, but methodically. It's navigating to a specific, deeply unsettling point in its history, a part of the book that isn't even there anymore. We are now investigating the mystery of the missing chapters. When scholars first cataloged the Codex Gigas, they immediately noticed the immense, jarring blank space. 10 vellum sheets, 20 pages, had been violently and deliberately cut out of the manuscript. They were not torn. The excision was clean, surgical, done with immense care and precision. leaving only thin, raw edges. This is the ultimate strange, mysterious detail and omission that speaks volumes. What was so horrifying, so dangerous, that it had to be completely removed from a book that already contained a portrait of the devil, magical spells, and guides to exorcism? The gap occurs right after the New Testament section and just before the medical and historical tracts. This has given rise to a confusing academic debate. Some argue the missing pages contain the Benedictine rule, removed during a sectarian feud to invalidate the manuscript's holy use. Others, darker scholars, suggest the pages contain the devil's most explicit instructions, a complete, step-by-step guide to summoning rituals, or perhaps a terrifying, true prophecy. No one knows why the person who removed them left the rest of the cursed text intact. Why spare the portrait of the devil, but eliminate those 10 pages? The removal suggests that the missing content was even more potent, even more actively dangerous than the book's infamous illustrations. You feel a pull towards that void, the space where the pages used to be. It's a vacuum of knowledge. When you place your finger near the cut edges of the remaining vellum, you feel a slight icy draft, as if the book is breathing, or perhaps sighing its loss. This is your silent dialogue with the absence. You are asking, without speaking, what did you hide? This chilling void brings to mind a real historical horror event, the widespread burning of books and heretical texts during the Inquisitions across Europe. Often, books weren't entirely destroyed. Sometimes, individual chapters or passages were cut out by the authorities or, more chillingly, by the owner themselves, desperately trying to save the main body of the book while excising the perceived danger. Imagine the terror of the person who cut these pages. They would have been aware of the immense spiritual danger of destroying any part of the text, holy or otherwise. Yet, their fear of what those 10 pages contained must have outweighed their fear of eternal damnation for mutilating the manuscript. Here is a quick, morbid little joke to break the ice. The monk assigned to guard the codex after the pages were cut complained that the book was now drafty. He said, "I can't concentrate on my prayers. The devil's portrait keeps trying to escape through the gap." A foolish attempt at levity against an oppressive darkness. The climax of this part lies in the nature of the cut itself. Examine the edges closely in your mind. They are perfectly parallel, showing a strange familiarity with the book's structure. This wasn't the work of a panicked vandal. It was the work of someone who knew the codex intimately, knew exactly what they needed to destroy, and knew the only way to neutralize it was to physically excise it, creating a permanent gaping wound in the giant text. You close your eyes and imagine the words on those missing pages. Were they a mirror of your own fears? Were they the culmination of Herman's cursed knowledge? The terrifying reality is that the most dangerous content in the Devil's Bible isn't what remains, but what was so feared that it had to be ripped away, leaving only this terrifying, cold emptiness. The massive book lies before you, scarred by its missing pages, a physical manifestation of fear and forbidden knowledge. But the book did not just hold the secrets of one monk's soul. It became intertwined with larger historical catastrophes. We now trace its journey through a time of widespread death and terror, the plague's retribution. The 14th century saw the arrival of the Black Death, a real historical horror event that decimated Europe. This plague, a biological terror that killed over a third of the continent's population, naturally became linked in the minds of the survivors to divine wrath and demonic influence. The Codex Gigas was, at this time, housed in a monastery in Bohemia, a region hit particularly hard by the pestilence. While entire communities were wiped out and most valuable objects were either burned or abandoned, the Codex survived. This survival is the source of a strange, mysterious detail. Records from the time, often written in frantic, shaky hands, detail that whenever the plague approached the monastery walls, the monks would not pray over the book or seek its divine protection. Instead, they would frantically wrap the codex in layers of dark cloth and leather and bury it in the damp earth outside the consecrated grounds. They buried the Devil's Bible to protect the monastery from the plague, not the other way around. The widespread belief, recorded in private diaries, was that the book was a lightning rod for divine anger, and keeping it inside their walls would draw the plague's wrath down upon them. They treated it like a dangerously potent vial of poison. This bizarre practice leads to a confusing academic debate. Why did the plague seem to retreat, or at least pass lightly over the monastery every time the book was buried? No one knows why they believed the book itself was a source of contagion, or if their strange ritual of burial actually worked. Were they using the book's malignant power to repel a greater evil, turning its curse outwards? Or was the apparent reprieve merely a terrifying coincidence, reinforcing a deeply superstitious and dangerous practice? It suggests the monks had gained a fearful, secret knowledge about how to manage the book's cursed energy. You are performing a silent dialogue with the long-dead monks now. You can almost feel the cold, heavy weight of the book being lowered into the soil, the smell of fresh earth mixing with the lingering sulfurous odor of the parchment. You ask them, did you truly believe you could trick the plague by feeding it the devil's book? Here is a short, dark joke that speaks to the absurdity of the time. During one particularly bad outbreak, a nervous young monk watched his elders bury the codex. He turned to another and whispered, "If the book is so evil it attracts the plague, why did we leave the abbot inside?" A moment of black humor about the fear and distrust that often accompanied the mass death. The climax of this section is the realization that the book was not damaged by these repeated burials. It always emerged, intact and defiant, its pages perfectly preserved by the very earth intended to contain its darkness. It proved its resilience not just to fire and time, but to the most widespread agent of death the world had ever known. It survived the human race's attempts at self-destruction, sitting cold and patient, waiting for the terror to subside so it could continue its silent, terrifying journey through history, an eternal, cursed artifact. The Codex Gigas survived the plague, emerging from the earth cold and seemingly more potent than ever. Now, we turn our attention from the hands of the terrified monks to the single, academic curiosity of one man, a man who perhaps understood the book too well. This part is dedicated to the alchemist's warning. In the 16th century, the manuscript briefly fell into the hands of a renowned, yet deeply secretive, alchemist attached to the court of Emperor Rudolf II. This man, whose name has been deliberately obscured in the records, a strange, mysterious detail in itself, was fascinated not by the religious texts, but by the book's seemingly endless chronicles and its inclusion of medical and magical formulas. He spent 3 years locked away with the codex. When the book was suddenly removed from his care and transferred to a more secure location, he left behind a single, terrifying note for the next keeper. The note was written in a complex code, a cipher that took centuries to break. Its core message contained a chilling warning of consequence. The alchemist claimed that the book was a living mechanism, not a passive document. It didn't curse people externally. It worked internally. It fed on the reader's knowledge and curiosity, slowly replacing their logical, human mind with the cold, alien wisdom found in its pages. He wrote, "The wisdom of the giant is not free. It will cost you the ability to taste light, and you will become deaf to the warmth of a human voice." This psychological draining aligns with a real historical horror event, the sudden, inexplicable descent into madness of several highly educated scholars throughout the early modern period. Men who had studied forbidden philosophy or arcane sciences, often experience terrifying episodes of paranoia, hallucinations, and self-mutilation. In the 17th century, the scholar François Baroil de Verville, a writer of esoteric fiction, went mad and claimed that his entire life was being narrated by a demonic entity. The Alchemist's Note suggests that the Codex Gigas was a direct catalyst for such madness, substituting the reader's soul with the eternal, cold logic of the devil's work. This phenomenon is tied to a confusing academic debate. The Alchemist's Note explicitly mentions that the book must never be read aloud in a room with mirrors. No one knows why the presence of a reflection would amplify the book's power, or what horrific distortion of reality the alchemist witnessed. Was the mirrored reflection catching the image of a phantom reader? Or did the reflection capture not the reader's face, but the devil's own portrait, superimposed over the reader's eyes? This unexplained instruction became an unofficial, terrifying rule for the book's subsequent caretakers. You find yourself doing the silent dialogue now, looking around your own space. Are there any mirrors nearby? Do you dare look into them? After hearing that warning, did the alchemist's face change as he read? Here is a short, creepy joke based on the alchemist's obsession. The emperor once asked the alchemist if he had managed to turn lead into gold yet. The alchemist, gaunt and glassy-eyed, replied, "No, but I have managed to turn my own sanity into pure, terrifying truth, and the Codex gave me the recipe." It's the joke of a man who traded wealth for utter, soul-crushing certainty. The climax of this section is the chilling realization that the book's danger lies not in what it tells you, but what it takes from you. The alchemist's warning is clear. Every piece of forbidden wisdom you gain from the Codex Gigas comes at the cost of a piece of your humanity. As you read these words, you are drawing closer to the terrifying conclusion that the knowledge contained within the Devil's Bible is a self-consuming fire. The alchemist's warning about the Codex feeding on its readers lingers, a quiet poison in your mind. We move now from the book's physical presence to its intellectual core, the strange, hidden messages embedded in the very structure of the writing itself. This is the secret Latin code, where the text speaks in whispers only a meticulous eye can catch. The vast majority of the Codex Gigas is written in clear, though complex, Latin. However, there are numerous sections where the margins are filled with tiny, highly stylized script, the strange, mysterious detail of the marginalia. These are not simple notes or chapter summaries. They are written in a mix of different linguistic forms, using characters that resemble ancient runes, cryptic ciphers, and even backward Latin. It is a terrifying, hidden layer of text that sits right next to the Holy Scripture, a secret dialogue running parallel to the canonical truth. This marginalia is the subject of a persistent and intense, confusing academic debate. No one knows why the scribe, Herman, or perhaps the devil writing through him, embedded these strange codes, the most commonly accepted and chilling. Theory is that the marginalia functions as a key. It is believed to unlock the true, dark meaning of the main text, revealing that the holy words are a screen for something far more sinister. For instance, a seemingly harmless Bible verse in the main text, when read through the lens of the corresponding marginalia, turns into an instruction for a dark ritual, or a prophecy of coming destruction. A team of paleographers once spent a year meticulously translating a single line of the cipher. The resulting translation, a single sentence, was a real historical horror event in miniature. The sun dies and the moon laughs. This line was positioned next to the Book of Psalms, usually a source of comfort. The terror lies in the philosophical reversal, the destruction of light, and the triumph of a cold, indifferent darkness. The scholars involved in the translation reported intense psychological distress and paranoia, several resigning their posts, convinced they had awakened something dormant within the manuscript simply by deciphering its hidden truth. You are now engaged in a silent dialogue with the cryptic marginalia itself. You imagine holding a magnifying glass over the tiny, elegant symbols. Do these runes whisper the terms of Herman's contract? Do they detail the missing pages? You feel an urge, a pull to solve the puzzle, a terrifying intellectual curiosity that the alchemist warned you about. Here is a necessary light joke, a flicker of absurdity against the gloom. One particularly dedicated medieval scholar trying to decode the script grew so frustrated he wrote his own marginal note next to a particularly baffling cipher. If the devil wrote this, he has terrible handwriting. A small, human protest against the vastness of the darkness. The climax of this section is the terrifying realization of the book's duality. It is a sacred text and a profane manifesto, bound together in one massive volume. The secret code implies that the reader is never truly safe. Even when reading the holiest of passages, the codex is always talking, always whispering its dark truth, waiting for the right kind of mind, a mind like yours, to finally listen. The truth is hidden in plain sight, a cold thorn waiting to pierce your intellectual defenses. You pull your eyes away from the hypnotic complexity of the marginalia, feeling a faint intellectual vertigo. The book's secrets are designed to ensnare the mind. Now, we shift from the scribe, Herman, to the fate of the book's earliest known custodian after the monastery, bringing us to the unjust arrest. The Codex Gigas did not remain long in the relative quiet of the monastery. It was acquired, or perhaps confiscated, by Prince Vratislav of Bohemia in the late 13th century. This acquisition is tied to a chilling real historical horror event, the sudden and unexplained purge of Vratislav's own advisors and court officials. The official charge was treason, but the whispers at court suggested a far darker cause, a contagion of paranoia spread by a powerful, malevolent object. The book was a trophy, but it came with a terrifying price tag for its owner. Prince Vratislav himself, despite his high rank, eventually suffered a bizarre and strange, mysterious detail related to the codex. He was publicly arrested and imprisoned by his own family, accused not of a political crime, but of melancholia, a medieval term for severe, unreasoning depression and madness. The court records surrounding his arrest, a confusing academic debate, make no sense. No one knows why the powerful Prince Vratislav, who had just secured a massive and important text, was suddenly deemed unfit to rule based purely on a diagnosis of spiritual darkness. Was his madness a genuine descent into terror after reading the book? Or was this a coded political execution, using the terror surrounding the Devil's Bible as an excuse to neutralize a political rival who had grown too strange, too withdrawn, too close to the text? The arrest effectively removed the book from a person who had spent too long with it. You are witnessing a silent dialogue between the powerful man and the silent book. You imagine Vratislav sitting alone in his chamber, the massive codex open before him. He looks at the portrait of the devil, and he whispers, "What have you brought into my life?" The book, of course, gives no audible reply, but the knowledge it imparts is enough to shatter his world. Here is a quick, unsettling joke to lighten the heavy atmosphere. The guards sent to arrest Vratislav struggled to find the key to his strongbox. Vratislav, laughing dryly from his cell, whispered, "The key is hidden in the codex, near the devil's portrait. You'll need 3 men and a new moon to find it." The joke works because the guards would have genuinely feared approaching the book. The climax of this section is the chilling connection between the book's weight and the man's fate. Vratislav's confinement was physical, but the true prison was the psychological consequence of owning and reading the Codex Gigas. His life became a terrifying example for future owners. The book offers immense knowledge and power, but the consequence is total personal annihilation, often disguised as mundane, bureaucratic, or mental misfortune. The Codex always ensures that those who seek to master it are instead quietly and unjustly removed from history. The unjust fate of Prince Vratislav serves as a profound warning reading. The Codex Gigas is not a solitary act. As you look at the gigantic, silent volume, you begin to experience the chilling effect described by the alchemist and evidenced by the prince's madness. This is the Phantom Keeper, the unnerving sense that you are never truly alone with the book. You are performing a direct, silent dialogue with the atmosphere itself. You sit across from the Codex. You are absolutely still. The silence should be absolute. Yet you hear a subtle, almost rhythmic friction sound. It is not the turning of the pages. It is the sound of heavy, unseen fabric. Perhaps an old monk's coarse woolen habit shifting nearby. You ask yourself, did someone else enter the room? Is there a phantom presence monitoring my reading? This unnerving presence is believed to be the spirit of one of the book's former guardians. Perhaps the monk Hermann himself, or one of the disappeared monks from the German library. This ghost is not violent. Its horror lies in its chilling sensory details and its persistent, silent observation. You feel a cold breath on your neck when you lean in to read the marginalia. You see a momentary distortion in the air, a shimmer as if someone just walked past the periphery of your vision. This phenomenon is tied to a real historical horror event, the widespread terror of the Revenant, or the Walking Dead, particularly in medieval Slavic regions where the Codex originated. Unlike the vampire, the Revenant was a restless spirit, usually of a person who died a terrible, unjust death, whose sole purpose was to return and silently afflict the living with melancholy and dread. The Phantom Keeper is a spiritual revenant, condemned to silently watch over the cursed object he could not destroy. We encounter a confusing academic debate regarding the Phantom Keeper's motive. No one knows why the spirit does not attempt to physically stop people from reading the book. Does the spirit guard the book, ensuring no one damages it, or does it guard the reader, desperately trying to mentally impose its own fear and horror onto the new reader, hoping to drive them away without breaking its ghostly oath to the devil? It is a terrifying thought. The keeper is either a jailer or a silent, invisible helper whose only tool is fear. Here is a quick, unsettling joke. One nervous watchman, convinced he felt a presence, tried to address it. He stood up and announced loudly to the empty room, "If you're going to watch me read, could you at least pass me a cup of tea and stop breathing down my neck? It's distracting." The joke fails to land because the phantom presence remains, silent and cold, refusing to acknowledge the human attempt at connection. The strange, mysterious detail here is the dust. The Phantom Keeper leaves no footprints, but sometimes a thin layer of fine, dark dust appears on the chair opposite the reader, right on the velvet seat cushion, even in a sealed, clean room. It's the dust of the grave, or the soil from the plague burials, silently marking its presence. The climax of this section is the terrifying realization that the reader, is now bound into the Codex's history. You are no longer just an observer. By feeling the cold breath and hearing the phantom fabric shift, you have acknowledged the keeper. The terrifying journey has become collaborative, and you realize that even if you walk away from the book, the Phantom Keeper might now follow you, ensuring the cursed story continues. You know the Phantom Keeper is watching, a cold, silent audience to your descent into the book's mysteries. You dare not look up. Instead, you turn your attention back to the forbidden contents, to one of the book's darker secrets embedded within the medical and magical tracts. This part explores the mirror ritual, a deeply unsettling practice outlined in the Codex. The text describes, in disturbing detail, a ritual involving reflection and shadow, a technique to see beyond the present moment. It is presented not as a prophecy, but as a diagnostic tool, a means of viewing the spiritual health of a patient. The instructions are meticulous. The ritual must be performed at midnight, under the light of a single, flickering tallow candle. and most importantly, it requires a mirror made of highly polished, antique silver. The silver, the text states, must be old enough to have witnessed human grief. This mirrors the real historical horror event of scrying, or mirror gazing, which was outlawed and fiercely persecuted during the height of the witch trials. In the 16th and 17th centuries, many people accused of witchcraft were condemned based on their supposed use of mirrors to see secrets, communicate with entities, or conjure evil reflections. The terror was rooted in the idea that the mirrored image was not just a reflection, but a separate, sentient entity capable of influencing reality. The specific instructions in the Codex contain a strange, mysterious detail. The reader must not only look into the mirror, but must look through their own reflection, focusing instead on the darkness in the room behind them. The text warns that if you focus on your own image, you will see a shadow of what you become. It is a horrifying suggestion that the act of reading the Codex is altering your very essence, and the mirror is merely there to provide the cold, visual proof of your transformation. This chilling detail sparks a confusing academic debate about the purpose of the ritual. No one knows why the Codex included a ritual that, by its own admission, could drive the reader mad with terror. Was it genuinely a medical diagnostic, intended to show the spiritual corruption afflicting a person? Or was the ritual included by the devil as a sophisticated, psychological trap, a certainty that anyone who tries it will see their ultimate, damned fate reflected back at them, thereby sealing their hopelessness? The text is silent on the ethical purpose, only providing the meticulous, terrifying instructions. Here is a short, dark joke about the pervasive paranoia of the time. An apprentice to the alchemist, remember the alchemist's warning about mirrors in Part 8, once accidentally glanced at his reflection in a window pane while reading the Codex. He shrieked and covered his face, shouting, "My nose! The reflection says my nose looks better with a demon on it." The joke is the terrified certainty that even a fleeting reflection can reveal a terrifying truth. You are engaged in a crucial silent dialogue here. You remember the alchemist's warning, and you picture the silver mirror. You ask the book, what did Herman see when he performed this ritual? Did he see the devil looking back, or did he see himself becoming the devil's puppet? The climax of this section is the terrifying sensory detail of the reflection itself. The ritual is designed to make you stare into the shadow behind you, the shadow cast by the book itself. And the instructions state that when you look through your reflection, you will see not the room behind, but a vast, cold expanse of eternity, empty except for one thing, the outline of your own future. Written in the black ink of the Codex Gigas, the image of the mirror ritual fades, leaving you with the cold understanding that the Codex Gigas is actively seeking to show you your own terrifying future. But the book has not always had its way. This section recounts a moment when the book's existence was seriously threatened, bringing us to the Night of the Fire. This event took place in 1697 during the tumultuous period when the Codex was housed in the royal castle in Stockholm, Sweden, having been taken as war booty. A massive, catastrophic fire erupted, destroying large parts of the castle and consuming countless historical treasures. This was a real historical horror event, a destructive inferno that threatened to erase the Devil's Bible from existence and perhaps break its curse forever. As the fire raged, the enormous size and weight of the Codex proved to be its undoing. It was too heavy to carry down the precarious spiral stairs. In a moment of sheer panic and desperation, two soldiers decided on a brutal, immediate solution. They hurled the massive book out of a third-story window. The impact upon landing was tremendous, splitting the wooden cover and tearing loose several pages. Yet, the main body of the book survived, the parchment somehow resisting the immediate spread of the flames. This survival is linked to a strange, mysterious detail reported by several eyewitnesses. They claim that as the book flew through the air, just before it crashed, the page it was open to the page depicting the devil's portrait seemed to glow with a faint, internal red light. This light was visible only for a fraction of a second, an instantaneous flare that somehow warded off the immediate heat and flame. Was this the devil protecting his own masterpiece, or was it the protective energy of the contained curse, resisting its own annihilation? This led to a powerful and chilling, confusing academic debate. No one knows why the immense fall did not destroy the fragile vellum pages entirely. While the covers were damaged, the internal text blocks remained remarkably preserved. Some scholars argue that the ancient processing of the vellum, involving immense pressure and chemical baths, rendered it naturally fire-resistant. However, the darker theory persists. The book is not merely fire-resistant, it is fire-proof, protected by the same infernal power that helped write it. The fire, which consumed everything around it, only managed to scuff the cover, leaving the dark text untouched. You are performing a profound, silent dialogue with the history of the manuscript. You imagine the sight of the heavy codex tumbling through the smoke and light. What did the devil think in that moment? Did he hold his breath, knowing his testament was moments from destruction? Here is a short, unsettling joke that arose from the sheer absurdity of the event. After the fire, a conservationist was examining the damage. He shook his head and sighed. It's a miracle the book survived the fall, but now we have to decide, do we use holy water to put out the fire, or just wait for the devil to send in an insurance claim? The joke highlights the impossible nature of dealing with an artifact of such conflicting spiritual properties. The climax of this section is the terrifying realization of the book's malignant resilience. The fall, the fire, the water damage. It all failed to destroy the Codex Gigas. It is fundamentally undestroyable, designed for a purpose that transcends the temporary destruction of human calamity. It is a terrifying thought. You can't get rid of this book. It will always return, heavy and cold, waiting to be opened again. You have witnessed the book's origin, its movements, and its terrifying resistance to destruction. Now, you reach the final, most unsettling realization hidden within the Chronicles section of the manuscript. This is the endless scroll, the chilling suggestion that the Codex Gigas is not just a historical record, but an active, continuing prophecy. The historical section of the Codex, known as the Chronica Bohemorum, is an immense and detailed account of the history of Bohemia. It is meticulously accurate until a certain point. The text continues beyond the known historical events of the 13th century, where it should end. The handwriting, that chillingly uniform script, continues on for many pages, describing events that have not yet occurred, or that are only vaguely recognizable as major, catastrophic global shifts. This extension of the timeline is the ultimate strange, mysterious detail. The prophecy is presented not in cryptic verses, but in the flat, matter-of-fact tone of a history textbook. It describes plagues yet to strike, wars yet to be fought, and the final, cold silence of a world without light. It is history written backwards, a future already documented as a forgotten past. This presents a terrifying, confusing academic debate. No one knows why the devil, or Herman, would include a precise, detailed history of the future. Is the devil demonstrating his omniscience and control over human fate? Or is the book itself a cursed device designed to force the future it describes, turning the Chronicles into a self-fulfilling, malignant prophecy? The terrifying prospect is that by reading the book, you are simply confirming the timeline, not changing it. The descriptions in the prophetic section are linked to a real historical horror event, the cyclical nature of global pandemics and widespread famines that seem to repeat across centuries. The Codex describes a cold cough that shuts down cities and a sunless summer that leads to cannibalism in the north. While these details can be dismissed as medieval apocalyptic paranoia, the terrifying precision of certain geopolitical shifts described in the same passive, historical voice suggests a knowledge far beyond the 13th century monk. You are performing a crucial, terrifying silent dialogue with the future itself. as you run your finger over the chillingly familiar events written as history. You ask, am I reading the script of my own life, already written in this unholy book? Is my final destination already a cold footnote in this text? Here is a necessary piece of dark humor. A paleographer, deeply invested in decoding the prophecies, reportedly tried to bet his colleagues on the outcome of a future war he read about in the Codex. When he lost the bet, he grumbled, "The devil needs to update his sources, or maybe I just read the marginalia too quickly." The joke is the terrifying blur between historical fact and predetermined doom. The climax of this section is the sensory detail of the ink. The ink used in the prophetic section is subtly different from the rest. It looks darker, richer, as if the darkness in the room is being actively absorbed into the text. You have the sudden, absolute certainty that the pages describing your future are the freshest in the entire book. The endless scroll continues, and its newest, most terrifying chapter is yours. The book is a time machine of dread, and you are trapped within its trajectory. You pull back from the prophetic scroll, feeling the chill of a future already inscribed. Your journey through the Codex Gigas is nearing its physical end. This final, terrifying act is the closing of the cover, the moment you realize your connection to this cursed artifact is permanent. You push the massive vellum page over the spine. The book is now closed, its massive cover a final, physical barrier between you and the portrait of the devil, between you and the dark chronicles of the future. The room instantly feels warmer, the tension slightly diffused, but the silence is heavier than before. However, the connection is not broken. You suddenly experience a profound, confusing sense of déjà vu. This sensation is tied to a strange, mysterious detail that has been accumulating throughout your reading. You recall details you never learned: the precise scent of the wax the monk Herman used on his quill, the exact sequence of the missing pages, the pattern of the cracks in Prince Vratislav's cell floor. You realize these are not memories of your life, but fragments of the lives of the previous keepers, now transferred to your consciousness. The Codex has used your curiosity to download its entire psychic history into your mind. This absorption of history relates to a terrifying real historical horror event, the concept of the cursed transference, often found in folklore, where handling a relic of great evil transfers the curse to the new holder. The historical accounts of previous keepers, their madness, their fear, their unjust fates, you now carry all of it. The book is safe, but the curse has been successfully transferred to you. This leads to a final, horrifying, confusing academic debate. No one knows if the book's true. Ultimate goal is its own preservation, or the permanent creation of a new, suffering keeper. Does the devil need the book to survive, or does he simply need a continuous line of cursed individuals to carry its psychic memory? By closing the book, you have completed the cycle. The terrifying logic suggests that you are now the Phantom Keeper, destined to silently watch over the Codex until another curious soul takes your place. Here is one final, necessary dark joke. You look down at your hand on the cover, and you realize you have a smudge of that strangely thick, dark ink on your thumb. You try to wipe it off, but it just seems to soak into your skin. You whisper to yourself, "Well, at least I won't have to worry about finding an exciting hobby. I am the exciting, cursed hobby now." You are engaged in the final silent dialogue with the book, which now feels like an extension of your own mind. You ask it, "What do you want from me?" The book, though closed, gives a clear, cold answer that echoes in your mind. "Nothing. You are already mine." The climax of this section is the sensory detail of the hand. You pull your hand away from the massive cover, and you look at your palm. You see a faint, dark line, a tiny, almost invisible etching on your skin that wasn't there before. It is the beginning of the Textura script, a perfect, machine-like letter, subtly appearing on your skin, proof that the knowledge, the darkness, and the curse have been permanently inked into your own being. You stand in the silence, the enormous, dark book, now merely an inanimate object. The tension bled out of the room and into you. The frantic whispers subside, replaced by a quiet, deep understanding. The Codex. Gigas is closed, and the journey through its terrifying depths is over. You take a slow, full breath, letting the cooler air of the present moment clear the sulphurous, stale dread from your lungs. The weight of the book remains, not on the table, but as a cold, dense mass in the deepest part of your memory. The fear you experienced was sharp, a chilling thorn, but now it begins to transform into a peculiar, protective melancholy. The knowledge you gained is immense, terrifying, and utterly lonely. You now know the secrets of the past and the cold script of the future. It is a terrible burden, but it is yours alone. Let the images fade gently. The devil's portrait shrinks from a monstrous, life-sized figure to a simple, black and white illustration. The scent of sulfur is just the faint smell of old paper. The sounds are just the settling of dust. You are safe in your own space, your own time. The world outside is still turning, unaware of the vast, dark secret you now carry. Allow your eyes to close. The heavy chains of history are not around the book anymore. They are around your newly acquired knowledge. But chains can also be anchors. Let this cold truth anchor you, not to fear, but to a deep, profound calm. The nightmare is over. Rest now. Let the slow, rhythmic beat of your own heart replace the whispering ink, and let the long, dark journey lead you gently into sleep.